Brandon Davies, a former treasurer at Barclays Bank and someone who's lectured and written extensively on the banking and financial market risk. Hi, Brandon.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. We had our last guest saying that,
Andrew,
you have to put on, you have to increase capital, you increase risk. Is it that simple?
No, I don't think it is at all. I think that the problems of increasing capital are really that capital can disappear very, very quickly. There's been a recent demise of a bank in Denmark called Banken, which is a fascinating case because what you can see is just how much the volatility of assets under fair valuing explodes the balance sheet, and the bank just disappears very rapidly. And I don't think it's going to make any difference whether it's 10% or 20%, frankly.
Yeah.
Geared operations are geared operations, and if you have very high volatility in the mark-to-market of the assets, then and these are mostly property assets, then you have got a problem. The
fact that banking shares are all rising today, all of the UK banks, tells us that it wasn't as harsh as maybe it could have been, or not?
I think it wasn't as harsh as people were in general expecting, with something more on the move towards subsidiarisation, and that hasn't been pushed very much.
So ring fencing, what does it actually mean?
Ring fencing retail deposits probably means a means of transferring that to some other organisation, rather along the lines of the US model.
But it says that retail banks would be independently capitalised?
UK Bank, independently capitalising UK banks, I don't think, again, is the really big issue. It's whether you can share in the treasury operations the liquidity and capital of the group.
And would you think
here you've got a slight carve out of that, but it's not a massive one.
Because everyone was worried about before, raising capital, the cost of capital. It's all gonna rise. Is it gonna hit profits for banks? What you've seen today or not?
Well, what I've seen today isn't going to hit profits as much as I think was already in the price.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to get a relief rally in that sense, But I think that sure, banking is not going to be as profitable as it once was, I suspect. And that's because there is a lot more capital to carry now. But banks will get used to that, and they'll find ways of improving the returns, I'm sure.
Well, Andrew was saying they've got lots of lawyers and they've got lots of ways of getting around these things.
I don't think it's much the lawyers and the thing. I think that one of the other things that regulation does all the time is embed the existing banks more and more. You create a situation where it's very difficult to compete. You might be saying, yes, we want people to come and compete, but it isn't proving terribly popular, is it?
Yeah.
How many, where's the queue? There isn't one. This is not easy to do. I've worked on the economics for a couple of people have tried to move into retail banking.
Yeah.
The economics just aren't that good unless you're going in really big scale.
What about us versus the rest? Does this make it less competitive being here? Is it going to be more costly? Are banks going to go overseas, or is that all just scary?
I think whether banks go overseas or not is a wholly different issue. I think that when you look at the banks that are in the UK, or many of the banks that are in the UK, they're here almost more for historic reasons than commercial reasons in some ways. But the UK does provide them with a relatively stable base compared with anybody else. The political risks, despite the fact that they seem to have risen significantly and still nowhere near what they are in lots of other parts of the world. So, no, I don't think that's the big issue. I think if they go abroad, it'll be purely for commercial reasons. You could, in some ways, Barclays looks a bit odd with Lehman's being not teamed up with a US domestic banking operation.
Yeah.
And all of its competitors are. And that would seem to me to have some benefits because it will provide a stable funding base, but also it will provide the raw material for capital markets transactions.
Brandon, thanks for joining us today. Brandon Davies there from Barclays Bank.